Oh crap, we already got the first wrong logo up. Good evening, ghouls and fiends, and welcome once again to the Ministry of Horror. I'm your host, as per usual, Tez, and we'll just kind of very quickly discuss the weekend. So I appeared on the Ministry of Slam with Lawrence. Lee's stepping away from Ministry of Slam for a bit. So I'm kind of just helping out where I can. So I think it goes without saying, as I mentioned on the show yesterday, I wish all the best for Lee. Always here to chat. But that was Sunday. This is today. Today is the Ministry of Horror. Got a few people in the chat. I see we've got the Graph, we've got Bericles, Fran the Cannon, Bruce Todd. Hey guys, hope you've all had a good week. It's a solo show tonight, and it's not even going to be a super long one. There's not much in the way of reviews. There's one particular review, but it's once again been a tough week to find something new to stream. And even when I'm not being a cheapskate looking at things to purchase or to rent. So we do have the one review coming up a little bit later on of Candyman. We've got some news that we're going to get to in a moment, and then the main attraction of today, we're going to round out our mini season of remakes by looking at one of the ripest subgenres for remakes, which is slashers. It's not going to be a concise every remake under the sun. I've whittled it down to a small handful. There's going to be a couple of honorary mentions. But we're looking at remakes. We're looking at that in kind of the looser sense. You're going to have soft reboots, reimaginings, whatever you want to call it. But generally, they're going to fall under that banner. So we'll get to them a bit later on. First off, as per usual, the Ministry of Slam was this past weekend, every Sunday. Check it out this coming Sunday, 7 p.m. On the MOS network and all podcast feeds. I believe next week we should have the next issue from Bericles and Dave of the Turner years. Really good stuff so far. That's every 2 weeks on Tuesday. And then Andy Evans with the retro chat every Tuesday, 7 p.m. So yeah, just plenty of things for you to sink your fangs into, if you will, on the MOS network. So let's just dive straight into the latest horror news. This comes just 28 minutes ago on bloodydisgusting.com from John Squires. There are 5 horror movies releasing this week. Will I be able to watch them so I can review them? Who knows? Now, it's got a tinge of horror, but legend of the horror world, Sam Raimi, director, is returning to both Marvel and the horror genre with the sequel Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Now, the first Doctor Strange film was one of the Marvel films that kind of went over my head a bit. It's not a character that I'm really that invested in personally. I thought the film was fine, but I really don't remember a lot about it. That being said, I'm quite intrigued to see how the greater Marvel cinematic universe handles horror. And obviously Sam Raimi has worked on the Spider-Man trilogy, made his name, initially in the horror world. And there are hints of it. I think in the trailer, there's like a zombified Doctor Strange or a multiverse version of zombies. Don't know a lot about it. I know that there's the whole what ifs, which I haven't seen any of. So who knows? I'm intrigued. I will watch it. Will it be a cinema job? It's going to depend on the hype. Also, I don't live near any cinemas. I am in the middle of nowhere. But here we go. The new horror arriving this week. So survival thriller Breathe has been released on VOD outlets today from director John Reel. This is courtesy of Uncorked Entertainment. In the film, Lara Winslet is an expert geologist in volcanology. She is together with her team of work on that's bad grammar. Work on a volcano to conduct surveys. At the end of the working day, Lara decides to stay a little longer to finish an exam, and she remains so alone. I don't think this little blurb. I'm not saying this is John Squire's wording, but I don't know if it's a copy and paste job. It doesn't seem to be worded brilliantly. Returning, we'll get back to it. Returning, she has an accident, falling inside a hole in the ground and remains blocked inside there where no one can see nor hear her. This experience will lead her to take an examination of her whole life and to think of her daughter. Okay, moving on. I'll drop the link in the chat. Oh, let's see if this works actually. Hey, oh, look, we got chat on screen. I'm slowly learning things, people. I'm slowly learning things, and things seem to be working. Isn't that great? So I will drop the link in the chat. That did not do any justice. I saw the trailer. Looks a bit like 127 hours. Now, funnily enough, I've not actually seen 127 hours. I don't know if I will. I think it's one of those films where when you know what the big thing is that's happening, that happens, it kind of takes my interest off it. Like I don't have that voyeuristic interest of I want to see what it looks like. I imagine it looks like an arm being sliced off. But yeah, I've not watched the trailer yet. This has literally just popped up. The blurb doesn't sound too interesting to me, but like I say, having a bit of a dry spell with new horror, so beggars can't be choosers. Next up, it's pretty quiet for the rest of the week until Friday, which marks the Shudder premiere of brand new original horror movie, The Twin. Shudder's latest stars Lights Out actress Teresa Palmer, which always makes me think of Twin Peaks. The Twin is the new horror movie from Lake Bodom director Taneli Mustonen. Now, Lake Bodom that's pretty cool. Following the aftermath of a tragic accident that claimed the life of one of their twins, Rachel, played by Teresa Palmer, from Warm Bodies and A Discovery of Witches, and husband Anthony, Stephen Cree, also from A Discovery of Witches and Outlander, I haven't seen any of those things, relocate to the other side of the world with their surviving son in the hopes of building a new life. What begins as a time of healing in the quiet Scandinavian countryside soon takes an ominous turn when Rachel begins to unravel the torturous truth about her son and confronts the malicious forces attempting to take a hold of him. That seems more interesting to me than that Breathe film. Again, I haven't seen any of these trailers yet. Shudder, I've been kind of critical of some of their new films of late. The one that I watched a couple of weeks back, the Alicia Cuthbert, I thought was actually really good, so that was a good step in the right direction. I will check out these trailers. This is my crap preparation. But that sounds interesting. Now, next up, Peter Fasinelli stars alongside Eric Dane and Terry Polo in the psychological thriller The Ravine, which BD's parent company, Cinedigm, is bringing to theatres and VOD this Friday. In the film, a sleepy suburb of New Orleans seems like the idyllic place to raise a family until an unspeakable crime rocks the community to its core. Oh, God. With more questions than answers... Oh, wait a minute, where's this moved to? With more questions than answers, family and friends are left to wonder if they overlooked the murderer among them or if there might be more to the story. Oh, I do like a good mystery. I do like a good thriller, a good mystery thriller, a thriller that's mysterious. So that is, it's written by Keone Waxman, wrote and directed The Ravine, based on Robert Pascuzzi's novel. Now, I believe Robert Pascuzzi, I may be getting mixed up, is he not the writer behind True Detective? I think I have got that mixed up. The name just seems similar. Leslie Uggams from Deadpool, Byron Mann of Skyscraper, and Lucy Faust of the Underground Railroad co-star. The Ravine is inspired by true events. The horror was real, yet so is the overwhelming sense of human understanding that it brought to us. I mean, if it's based on something that's happened, that always adds, that always adds something to it. Hey, so we've got Voodoo Vegas, we got Ministry of Slam in the chat. Hey guys. Yeah, I mean, anything when it's based on a true story instantly has, my intrigue. I'm a glutton for a good true crime. Now, here's another film we mentioned on the news a couple of weeks back. I've seen the trailer for it now. Intrigued. I wouldn't say hyped, but I would say intrigued, and that is Escape the Field. Lionsgate is back with Escape the Field, a new horror film from Emerson Moore that will open in select theatres and on VOD platforms this Friday, May the 6th. In the film, the fear is inescapable and suspense non-stop in this gripping horror thriller about 6 strangers who suddenly awaken in a remote, endless cornfield. Stripped of their possessions, they are left with only 6 items: a gun with a single bullet, matches, a lantern, a knife, a compass, and a flask of water. As mysterious sirens blare in the distance and traps appear at every turn, the group realizes it's been plunged into a cat-and-mouse game with an unseen evil, and survival depends upon solving a diabolical and deadly puzzle. Now, yeah, the trailer looks like it could be good, it could be kind of shoddy, who knows. I always find with these mystery things, the intrigue sometimes can be quite difficult to satisfyingly come to a resolution. There was a TV series a couple of years ago called Wayward Pines, and the premise of it was quite interesting. And even when they started revealing things and revealing what was going on, for me, I still found it quite interesting. But then it seemed to kind of shit the bed. I know it was based on a series of books. I haven't read those, but kind of similar with Lost. The premise, the setup was very interesting, had people hooked. They maybe dragged it out too long. This was the era of network TV where each season was like 20-odd episodes and about 10 of them are filler. But again, I wouldn't necessarily say it stuck the landing. Whether that ending was in place to begin with or not, who knows? He Who Walks Behind the Rose. Could this be a marketing ploy like The Woods when it was announced and then it turned out to be Blair Witch? Could this be Children of the Corn 13? Who knows? Maybe. Would you be interested in that? Some of the Children of the Corn films are decent, some are absolute garbage. And that then brings us to this Friday's release, which I know Lawrence is very much looking forward to. Him and Meryl are going to watch it this weekend, or the end of this week. That is the Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which is horror master Sam Raimi's first movie in nearly 10 years. What was his last one then? Because Drag Me That to Hell, is that 10 years old? I thought that might have been older. Yeah, Frown the Cannon. I kind of lost interest by the end of season 1. I enjoyed it, but I didn't really have the interest to watch season 2. The end of season 1 didn't really leave me wanting to follow it on. But here we go. Marvel's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. The MCU unlocks the multiverse and pushes its boundaries further than ever before. Journey into the unknown with Doctor Strange, who, with the help of mystical allies, both old and new, traverses the mind-bending and dangerous alternate realities of the multiverse to confront a mysterious new adversary. So I have seen the trailer. I won't talk about the trailer, no spoilers or anything. But the trailer was interesting. I don't know anything about who the adversary is going to be. That it does hint at a familiar face maybe becoming an adversary. I'll again keep it very vague, but I really don't know much about it. Who knows? I may get someone to watch my dog and make the hour or so journey to the cinema. I moved out here because it's really cheap, but there's nothing around here other than supermarkets. Voodoo Vegas. So pumped for Doctor Strange. Whoop. I'm looking forward, Lawrence, to your spoiler. I know you're going to do a spoiler review and a spoiler-free review. I'll definitely check out the spoiler-free review, just to kind of see what is going on. I'm very easily influenced by the hype train of things, so I imagine once I start hearing, kind of how good the film is, then it'll be very easy for me to suddenly flip a switch and be like, oh my god. So Barracles, Thursday is going to be interesting. I've seen reviews saying you might want to keep the kids at home. Could be a problem. Oh, god damn it, Barracles. Now that I hear that, I think, okay, that sounds like it's going to be pretty scary. Okay, maybe now I'm a little bit interested. Bruce Todd, I'm in the minority. I hear Marvel and I sigh greatly. Yeah, some people, the superhero films or the Marvel films, it's not for them. It's not for everyone. Gruff says there are leaks out already that I'm avoiding. I know barely anything about it, and I'm so excited. Yes. I'm not going to repeat what Lawrence has just said. And yes, well done, Pericles. But yeah, the Gruff, there are leaks out already that I'm avoiding. I know barely anything about it. I'm so excited too. Yeah, I much prefer to see a film knowing nothing about it, uh, knowing the bare minimum. Um, I think it is such a shame in this day and age how quickly spoilers are put out, and by I mean, friend of the former host, co-host of the Ministry of Slam, Simon Miller. He works for What Culture, and I remember before the week or like 5 days before the Batman had its UK release, there was and obviously I know there's writers behind it. I'm in no way blaming Simon Miller, but there was a video, and the thumbnail was 5 of the craziest things we learnt from the Batman, and the thumbnails on YouTube, they autoplay sometimes. I'm just thinking the film's not even out yet. Like, come on. Spider-Man, prime example. I mean, part of the marketing campaign was one of the big reveals in the film, and I think it's such a good thing if you don't know that that's coming. But in this day and age, you don't see it within the first 48 hours. It kind of becomes your fault, which I just think is a little bit crazy. But that's the day and age that we live in, people. That is the day and age that we live in. Yes, Fran the Cannon. I recommend the Marvel Zombies comic book series. It was written by Robert Walking Dead Kirkman. I have when I went through a kick of reading quite a bit of Marvel, the zombie stuff was great. And there was there's a Deadpool zombie thing, which is just excellent. Yeah, the What If series of Marvel, I'm interested by, but I need to get into a Marvel mood, and at the moment I'm kind of slowly slugging through Moon Knight. It's fine, but I'm not on the hype train yet. When I'm on the hype train, I will then seek out those things. But I mean, maybe I'll just switch to the Marvel zombie episode, the Marvel What If zombie episode. We'll see. We'll see. But anyway, that's the new films coming out this week. Next up on the news, for fans of the Conjuring universe, The Nun 2 plot details have been teased in an official casting call. The next installment of the Conjuring universe is set to be The Nun 2. We're bloody disgusting, letting you know last week that Michael Chavez, who worked on The Curse of La Llorona and The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, which are both films that I kind of had lower expectations on just because I didn't really know about The Curse of La Llorona, and The Devil Made Me Do It didn't have James Wan directing, but both were pretty enjoyable, pretty good horrors. He will be taken over as director, confirmed by producer James Wan. Shortly thereafter, Bonnie Aarons will be back again playing the demon known as Valak. I mean, if anyone's seen The Conjuring 2 or The Nun, which The Nun I wasn't massively impressed with when I first saw it in the cinema, just because pretty much everything is at night. I know it's a horror, but if you're just basically looking at darkness for an hour and a half, it's a bit like, oh man, this is kind of boring. But on rewatching, I do think The Nun has some good moments. It's not one of the best in the universe, but I think it's great. And the character of Valak is a genuinely creepy antagonist. Well, today, the film's official Twitter account has tweeted out a link to a casting call for The Nun 2, which includes a brief plot synopsis for the upcoming sequel. So if you don't want to know anything about The Nun 2, put your fingers in your ears or turn the volume down for 10 seconds. So the plot synopsis is 1956, France. A priest is murdered, and evil is spreading. The sequel to the worldwide smash hit The Nun follows Sister Irene as she once again comes face to face with the demonic force Valak, the demon nun. Okay, so yeah, Sister Irene was played by Thaisa Farmiga, who's the sister of Vera Farmiga, who plays Lorraine. And Thaisa has been in loads of stuff. Final Girls, the first season of American Horror Story, when American Horror Story kind of had a bit of direction. Just my opinion. But yeah, The Nun got like 365 million in worldwide box office. It probably had like a 20 million budget, if that, because Blumhouse are incredible at making great looking films on relatively low budgets in the modern sense of the word. So that's, and apparently it's being written by Akilah Cooper, who wrote *Malignant*, which I really enjoyed. I thought it was really good. So that is their casting at the moment. No idea on when that is going to be coming out. I wouldn't have thought until next year, but fans of The Conjuring, The Nun 2 is in production. Well, being cast. What have we got here? Zombie Blob sticks in my mind. Okay, that on my memory. Right. Okay, so that's still on the Marvel Zombies. I will I'll tell you what, after the show, because this isn't going to be one of our 2-hour shows, it's just me rambling. I will go on Disney Plus. I'll put it on the iPad because I've got to do some washing up while I'm getting the podcast downloaded, and I'll watch the What If Marvel Zombie episode. Now, this is interesting. I wouldn't say concerning, but this, funnily enough, we're talking remakes. This is the remake season, of course, mini season. The next bit of news is about a remake. I say I'm initially concerned, but at the same point, I don't care about remakes being made because nothing is the original isn't going anywhere. But this has kind of this doesn't fill me with hope because it's an American remake of a very successful British IP, and that doesn't always work that well. So a remake is being made of the British anthology series Inside Number 9, and it's in the works for Amazon Freevee. Now, is Amazon Freevee, is that the new name for IMDb TV? The sort of the free kind of add-on as part of Prime? I'm sure their logo's changed recently. Amazon Freevee, the ad-funding streaming service, here we go, formerly IMDb TV, unveiled an increased slate of originals. Among them is a new remake of the British series Inside Number 9, an anthology series that blends horror, dark humour, crime, and suspense. It's currently in development from Lionsgate Television and BBC Studios Los Angeles. It's a dark comedy, features high stakes, shocking twists, and the unexpected. If anyone's a fan of Inside Number 9, it's recently come back for, I think, its 7th season. And the episode last week, episode 2, was brilliant. It had a real sort of folklore sort of feel to it, and it also had that in just their great humor that really balances out the dark horror. Now Steve Pemberton and Reece Shearsmith will executive produce alongside Angie Stevenson and Josh Cole. Co-head of content and programming Lauren Anderson, told Deadline in a statement, "We want to do inventive, noisy, interesting television that show what and that show is one of one." Oh right, okay, and that show is Inside Number 9 is one of one. We hope we can make a version that is worthy of the legacy. The legacy is a high bar to clear, as Inside Number 9 is currently one of the best shows you're not watching. I agree, it's great if you like an anthology, and who doesn't? There's a new anthology out on DVD, Vipco's Vault of Terror on vipcovaults.com. Shameless plug there. It is brilliant. Like, there's episodes that are higher on the humor. There's episodes which have strong influences behind them. It's really worth watching. They did a live episode couple of years back, and it was set on like a BBC soundstage. It was really, really good. I think it must have been series 5, maybe the end of season 4. But yeah, it's what more could you want than little bite-sized horrors in 30 minutes? And a US remake, who knows? I'll watch it. Who knows? We'll see. Right, next bit of news. Lovecraft's Untold Stories 2 arrives on Steam May 17th. So this is a new Lovecraft video game. It's been developed by Blinny Games, and it's the follow-up to 2019's Lovecraft's Untold Stories. Early access. It's been in early access since last October, and it's announced that it will arrive on May 17th for PC via Steam. It follows on from the previous game. It involves surrealist artist Ardo Bonnet presenting his painting called Dream Landscape in the Paris Spring Salon of 1926. Of course, once the painting was unveiled, it caused a sudden riot. Not long after the exhibition, Ardros Bonneau falls into a strange sleep with no one able to rouse him. It's up to you to investigate. Join the detective, witch, and professor this time against the great old ones are the medium, veteran, and alienist. So I guess these are classes. Each class has their own unique playstyle, and add to that hundreds of different weapons and clothing items for you to use. Or if you're feeling ambitious, you can craft your own items. It kind of sounds like a massively multiplayer online game or a multiplayer game. I like Lovecraft. I can't say I've played that many of the games. As I may have said before, I do like horror games. I'm a bit of a wuss with them, but I find most these days seem to be Phasmophobia, multiplayer jobbies, and I don't know. I prefer a strong narrative story. At the moment, occasionally, my gaming streams are very hit and miss as to when I do them. I'll be playing Alan Wake on my personal channel, and then Condemned Criminal Origins on the Ministry of Horror, as and when. But yeah, maybe I'll look out for that. I'll see what the scores are like, see what the gameplay's like. But I'll drop that trailer in the chat. Don't know what is going on whichever channel that's live streaming on, but some sassy language there. Last bit of news we have now, talking about random multiplayer games based on horror IPs. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre actor who played the Hitchhiker, Ed Neal, is voicing the Hitchhiker in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre video game. Gun Interactive, who made Friday the 13th, are hard at work on their upcoming Texas Chainsaw Massacre video game, and they've made a pretty cool announcement today. Ed Neal, who played the Hitchhiker in Tobe Hooper's original horror classic, will be reprising the role in the upcoming game. Neal will be voicing the Hitchhiker, a playable killer. You can listen to a preview snippet of Neal's Hitchhiker voice below. I'll drop that in. Oh, and Kane Hodder is playing Leatherface. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen any footage yet. I don't think they've released any footage yet. They've done some character models I've seen on Twitter. I'm intrigued, but again, I would love to play a Texas Chainsaw Massacre game that has a single player mode. I'd really like the look of the Evil Dead, but I don't have that sort of gaming community where we'll jump in and play that kind of game. I'd much prefer a good narrative, which is, Fran Cannon, playing through the Supermassive games before The Quarry comes out, nearly finished Until Dawn. Until Dawn is excellent. That's probably the best, in my opinion, out of those. I really enjoyed the recent one with Pazuzu. Can't remember what it was called. And Man of Medan was decent. Little Hope is the only one I haven't finished yet. It's good, but it doesn't seem to have quite as much direction, whereas, again, the one with Pazuzu and Ashley Tisdale in it, I can't remember what it's called. That was pretty good. I did enjoy that. And Man of Medan's fine. Yeah, single player only for me with a good story. I'd love to play a decent single player Evil Dead game. 100% the Gruff. I imagine it takes a lot to make a video game. I'm not going to say it's easy at all. I mean, I know nothing about it. I can't make computer stuff. But I would just think, take some of the focus out of making these multiplayer games. And House of Ashes, yeah, thanks, Fran. And make a single player story. Like, what happened to the days of single player games having a multiplayer mode? I don't want to be old man shouting at the clouds, but it's seeming more and more that you have a multiplayer game and then a single player game as separate games that both will probably cost 50 to 65 quid. Just make a good single player game that maybe has a really cool multiplayer function. I'd rather spend a full price on that than maybe get a multiplayer game that's 30 quid. Like, 30 quid still 30 quid, But yeah, I mean, that's kind of cool that he's voicing it. I don't know too much about what Ed Neal's done outside of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but yeah, I'm with you on that, Gruff. Just an old man shouting at the clouds. Yeah, but it's quite cool to have him back. I mean, the Hitchhiker was one of the almost underrated characters in Texas Chainsaw Massacre because it's just really creepy. Now, we are now going to move on to the one and only review for tonight. Again, I normally try and get 2-3 films reviewed. I just really couldn't find anything. I was spending more time trying to look for a new, decent, intriguing horror. And I kind of ran out of time to look at a retro one. Again, there was nothing really that was on my radar that I thought, what can I do a retro review of that I haven't seen that isn't maybe going to be trash? Who knows? But Amazon Prime, I noticed at the weekend, have put on the 2021 Candyman. I'll try and put the poster behind the chat. That probably doesn't help with the chat. Let me just move the poster. Let's just put. Oh, who cares? Let's put the poster up here. There we go. Fine. That's fine. So this is directed by Nia Costa and written by Jordan Peele, Win Rosenfeld, and Costa. It's a direct sequel to the 1992 film of the same name. Again, I'm really not a fan of that concept of we'll have a sequel, but we don't want to put people off by putting a number behind it, so we're going to call it the same name as the original. Like, I think that's stupid. But it's the fourth film in the Candyman film series based on the short story The Forbidden. I can't complain too much about it being a sequel because I am a fan of a franchise, not particularly the Candyman franchise, but I do like a building universe, seeing what's happened with these characters or who else has come into this story. So I would much rather have this as it is be a new film, which could be a remake, but is also quite evidently becomes known as a sequel, and is part of the expanding story. So I won't go into the whole sort of production on this. I know its release and filming got delayed a number of times due to the pandemic. So Bruce Todd, I'm waiting for someone to do a Candyman set like the original story in a Liverpool council estate, preferably with Tony Todd. Yeah, I mean that was the original setting. I mean the Candyman film, the original, is quite different to the Forbidden, which I got around to reading. Check back on one of the earlier episodes of Ministry of Horror. We discussed it in the beginnings of the MOH book club. We'll talk about MOH book club a little bit later on. And yeah, it's quite different. The short story doesn't have any of the say his name a number of times. It does have the element though of he lives on as kind of a legend, or he needs people. By people talking about it, it kind of gives him strength, almost like a Freddy Krueger type. But this film, I wasn't hyped to watch. Like, I didn't go out of my way to watch it when it kind of first came out, just because Candyman isn't one of my franchises, really. I've seen the first two. Second one's not so good. The first is fine. It was creepy as a kid because it's one of the more visceral mainstream films of the time. But I didn't go out of my way to watch it. Now, Fran Account's mentioned some blinders in there. If it's on Prime, I might give this a go. It is on Prime, but I've got a few films recorded. I've not got around to watching yet, though. Ghost Stories. I thought Ghost Stories was great. I wasn't really a massive fan of the ending, but then I understand that it's based on a play. It's made by the same people that made the play, so maybe I'm missing something. The Void is freaking incredible. If you like The Thing, you'll love The Void. Haven't seen February, and The Witch is Robert Eggers. The Witch is great. It's really good. But yeah, so with Candyman, it follows a young artist who's moved in with his girlfriend, who's quite a successful artist, and he's kind of trying to find, I suppose, his voice. He's had some work that he's done, but he hasn't really done anything for a couple of years, so struggling a bit with doubt and, I suppose, writer's block or painter's block. He hears about this tale in Cabrini Green, which is the setting of the first film, but it's now become gentrified. What was once a very impoverished, run-down, graffiti-covered area is now full of young, hip artists in really fancy high-rise apartments. He hears this tale, kind of like, I think it's from his girlfriend's brother, about a Candyman, this person who, I won't go into too much because a number of different stories get told, but essentially in this we are interwoven with a version of the original story, except it's the Chinese Whispers where Virginia Madsen's character has gone mental and has tried to burn a baby in the annual bonfire, which obviously isn't the actual truth. We found out in the first film that she was trying to save the baby because Candyman was trying to sacrifice the baby. And later on, he goes to visit the more slum areas of Cabrini Green, and he gets a sting on his hand by, I guess, like a honeybee. Kind of looks more like a wasp, but it's, I think, a honeybee. From there, he meets this guy who works at a laundrette who tells him about a tale from, I think, only 20 years prior. A man with a hook for a hand was wanted by the police. Supposedly, he had been giving out sweets, candies to children, and they'd found razor blades in the candies. This young lad is in this rundown building. He goes, I guess, into the bathroom. There's a hole in the wall, and it's quite a creepy sequence. But this guy with a really creepy looking smile comes out the wall and tries to hand the candy to the kid. Kid screams, police run in, and without even flinching, beat him to death. A week goes by, another candy with a razor blade turns up, so he was innocent. But what is essentially happening is we are finding that there's a legend. There's not just one person that is essentially the Candyman. I mean, Candyman's a bit more on the nose with this legend, but it's something where it's injustice, racial injustice, racial attacks and all that. But this then starts to play on our main character, played by Yahya Abdul Mateen II. Is he starting to see things? I won't go into too much more, but I think this film has got some great kills in it. It's shot brilliantly. The opening with all the focus on looking up at these high-rise buildings is really quite euphoric. It's shot brilliantly. Nia Costa's done a great job. I don't know who the cinematography was by John Gulisarian, and generally it is. I was surprised that I enjoyed it just because I wasn't that hyped. Like I said, Candyman's not my franchise. But here's where we then enter kind of a bit of an issue. No, I say an issue. It's the ending. We won't go into the ending. I don't want to give out spoilers again. Around the canon, if you're inclined, give it a watch on Prime. It's free. Anyone else, if you haven't seen it, it's not a bad film. But it's when you start trying to look into the logic elements of it. There's an element of body transformations, and there's a plot which seems like things are set in motion. Again, I'm having to be very vague because I really don't want to give too much away. But when they start trying to explain the path that things are going down, that's where I think it falls over. And funnily enough, I do like Get Out by Jordan Peele, but with Us, I found it was decent until when they try to explain things. I do like a good explanation. Some things can be vague, some things it's good to have an explanation, but sometimes that explanation just doesn't really make any sense, and it almost asks more questions than it answers in its explanation. And I feel with this that the finale almost seems to kind of come out of nowhere. It seems to jump. I mean, I watched this on stream on my own channel at Tesius on Twitch, and it just seemed to suddenly be like, oh right, okay, what's going on now? Things seemed a little bit too convenient. There's also a couple of cameos. Again, I won't reveal too much, but some of them I think are quite nice and a great connection to the original film to give an overarching feel to a particular journey and also to really make this a true sequel. But then another one which then kind of, again, asks the question of, right, well, what's really going on here? Again, I can't say too much. But as a whole, that's a bit low on the screen, 6.5. It is good. It's shot great. There's some really great kills in it. Really great use of blurring the lines of reality and what you can really see and what's in a reflection. But yeah, I feel that it kind of let itself down. I think the finale just, I don't know if there's maybe some deleted scenes, or what, but it just kind of fell over. And this could have easily been a 7.5. Easily. Frown the Cannon. So, are we seeing the diminishing returns from Jordan Peele's influence? The Nope trailers so far do nothing for me. Nope doesn't really interest me a lot at the moment. Again, I really enjoyed Get Out. I thought Get Out was great. I thought the whole setup, the paranoia, even the reveal of what was really going on, I think was quite interesting. It was quite unique. But Us, for me, it's just it was fine. Some creepy moments, but the explanation, I thought the final sort of twist regarding the main character was quite good. But the explanation for what the doppelgangers are, I thought, what? I don't know. It seems like there's a good idea of a creepy idea, but then the explanation for that kind of maybe needs to go through a bit of a, let's review this again. Let's sleep on this and have a look and think, is this a good way to end it? And the Nope trailer, I don't know. I'll wait till there's another trailer. I know that he's confirmed it's aliens, which is fine. But yeah, does nothing for me. And Jordan Peele, I really wanted to like The Twilight Zone. He produced and presented a new series, The Twilight Zone. I got like 2 episodes in, and it wasn't for me. I mean, I will go back and watch I've got the box set, the Blu-ray box set of the classic black and white Rod Serling series. Yeah, I don't know. It seems like he hit massive highs with his first film, and then it's almost like his name's tacked on something, so it's going to be good, but it just isn't quite. And not to be too disparaging, but I do kind of have the same feeling about Toby Hooper. Don't come at me. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is incredible. It's one of the best slashers, best horrors. It's up there. It just is unnerving. But for me, yeah, I don't know. It's his other films. I don't really do too much for me. So maybe it's a case of you hit the high on the first go around and then you're kind of living off your name a bit. Not to say that too much of Toby Hooper. I haven't seen all of his films, but a lot of them I have seen outside of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1 and 2. Not so great. Berkeley's. Plus, wasn't the Twilight Zone retold old stories? I think it's a mixture of retellings of old ones and some new ones, but it just, I don't know. I don't know what it is about remakes of Twilight Zone, The Outer Limits, where it should be a home run to take that anthology, creepy, mysterious horror format, but it does the reboots just don't seem to work. I don't know what it is. Don't know. So yeah, that is Candyman. Now, MOH Book Club we briefly mentioned earlier on. I did say the second Tuesday of every month we'll be doing the book club. I'm only 147 pages into Funland, which I think is about 500 pages. It is good, but my God, it's small print. I don't know if it's the book I got, but it's like taking me a while just to read one of these pages. It's a paperback. It's not even a massive one, but it's like the print. I'm making excuses now, but what I'm saying is we may not necessarily be doing book club next week. It may be the week after, but you'll get a regular update so you know kind of where I'm at. I have already picked out the next book we are going to do. We'll talk about that when we get to the Funland discussion, which will be hopefully in a couple of weeks. But I stopped. Didn't realize new stuff was in there. Might try it out. Oh, is that in regards to Twilight Zone? Yeah, don't quote me on that, Pericles, but I'm fairly sure it's a mixture of some new tales and some old. Or I'd hope so, at least. I'm fairly certain at least the third episode or so is a new one. I'll find the count. I'm at page 200 now, so don't feel too bad now. Yeah, I am enjoying it. I think his writing so far, Richard Lemond, is quite good. He talks about nipples quite a lot, doesn't he? Like, I don't know if it's just the setting of a California promenade with like these fun houses and whatnot, scantily clad women, but it seems every other page is talking about dark nipples, and I'm thinking, does this guy not get much attention in that regard? I don't know. I mean, saying that, Stephen King sometimes, like, every book he'll have a section where he's just talking about boners, and you think, come on, man, I didn't really need to read that. But yeah, Funland is good so far. The next book I've started listening to on audiobook because I travel to my office a couple of times a week and it's like a 3 hour round trip. So I thought, you know what, just so for the next book or story we get to it quicker, I'm just going to do the audiobook. And I could probably tell you that now as well, because if you want to get the same head start as me, it is. Oh God, I probably should remember who the author is. The book is called Imaginary Friend, and it is by Stephen. Let me just check my phone. I've got 23 hours left of it. Stephen Chbosky. I saw it on a list of scary new novels, and so far it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I've done about an hour or so of it on the drive home today, but that. Oh my God, shut. It heard me say about horror novels, and my Alexa went off. No, my Siri. Sorry. So, we were doing MOH Book Club maybe next week, probably the week after. But now let's get on to our main discussion for the night, which means we're also going to have our main discussion music. Which, as Pericles has said before, sounds like the specials. It's not the specials, I don't think. Go. That was a song called I think it's called Nightmare something. I don't know. I've licensed it for this, so I say licensed. I downloaded it from a royalty-free jobby. We are finishing up the mini season of remakes by looking at one of the richest areas for remakes, which is the slasher film. Now, why is it such a rich area for remakes? Why have there been so many slasher films remade in modern times? Could it be slashers in the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s were incredibly profitable? Could it be that more often than not it's a masked killer who has whatever their reasons are for going on a little killing rampage, and part of it is the whodunit, the who's the person under the mask? Yes, slasher villains become icons. That's it. Part of it can be the image, the look, as we've got here on the screen at the moment. Michael Myers, very iconic. Could it be that it's the story itself? Well, the first film we're going to look at is it's both of them. We have, in John Carpenter's Halloween, an excellent story and an iconic killer with brilliant leading performances from Donald Pleasance and Jamie Lee Curtis. Now, I'm not going to do a massive deep dive on Halloween or its remake. We're going to be discussing this fairly briefly because there has been a Halloween franchise deep dive a few episodes back with Dean Jovey. We looked at the entire franchise. But we couldn't start a slasher discussion without talking about Halloween. It's the one that really started it all. There'd been some before it, but this is the one where you had the iconic score and direction and story from John Carpenter and Deborah Hill. Just the tone, the feel. I mean, I could gush about Halloween ad nauseum, but it gave us Michael Myers. Such an iconic killer that when they tried to go into a slightly different route, they'd told their story, or they'd attempted to tell the story through the studio's requirement through Halloween 2, and they wanted to go down an anthology route with 3. 3's fine, but the people wanted Michael Myers because he is just, it's this, I mean, look at him on screen. The expressionless face, the black eyes, the devil's eyes. With this story, we didn't have a case of who done it, who's under the mask. We know who it is under the mask. We don't need to see his face because it's essentially the mask is his face. It's expressionless. He is evil. We get an opening where we see from his point of view him murdering his sister as a child. Sorry, I just seen the Gruff's chat, and we can put the chat up on here as well, actually, because I do remember to do stuff. Oh, look at that. So I'm very impressed with myself that I managed to sort the chat thing out. Lawrence did tell me it was easy, and yeah, it is. Um, it's we know that he's essentially evil. I mean, Donald Pleasance's character, Dr. Loomis, tells us he spent a number of years trying to get through to him, and then the remaining years trying to keep him locked away because he just knew that there was nothing there. He was innate. He was just he was just evil. Now, we eventually in 2007 got a remake of this. It was going to happen sooner or later, but the Halloween franchise had gone to certain lengths and it had plumbed certain depths. It had a resurgence with Halloween H2O, bringing back Jamie Lee Curtis 20 years later. But then it was followed up by the worst film in the franchise, which was Resurrection. So that's one reason why a franchise can have a remake required. You've got such a profitable name and IP, a killer, key characters, that you then come to a point in the storyline, and with Halloween we had two different branching storylines because of the retconning of, parts 4 to 6 in H2O. That the story has run its course 10 times over. So what does the studio do? They go, well, let's try and follow up from Resurrection, which was such a commercial shit show. Let's go back to what people love, and that is Michael Myers, that is Laurie Strode. Now, they tapped up a guy that I really do like his music, and I did enjoy House of a Thousand Corpses, and I thought Devil's Rejects was excellent. They brought on board Rob Zombie. Now, I've spoken before that, I'm a big fan of his music. I like that just no nonsense heavy metal. White Zombie, their two main studio albums are incredible. But this is a guy who has created a lot of notoriety for himself. House of a Thousand Corpses had a huge amount of buzz. It was delayed a number of times. The studio getting cold feet because of its content. But it became a success, and it's really quite a visceral and grimy film. Did The Devil's Rejects, which I think is probably his best film in my opinion. But he was tapped up to do a remake. Now, I won't go too much into the nitty-gritty of the discussions between Rob Zombie and John Carpenter. I believe that John Carpenter was a bit miffed with Rob Zombie because they'd had discussions, and I think Rob kind of, again, I'm not gonna do the he said she said, but they tapped him up, and he did do something quite interesting with it. The Founder Can says, plus too many people these days seem averse to watching old movies, so it's easier to take a concept worked and make money and redo it for a new generation. 100%, and it's also similar with foreign language films. You can have an excellent foreign language film, but it's like, let's just remake it so people don't have to read subtitles or listen to poor dubbing. It's just the easier thing to do. But with Rob Zombie's version of Halloween, he wanted to really get into the younger years of Michael, what led him to do his first murders, and then go into retreading what happened in Halloween. Now, with Rob Zombie, I think he has a great look to his films. I think he is a good director, but as I've said before, I don't think he's a great writer, especially dialogue, more specifically dialogue. Demetrios Palkas says Tyler Durden. That's Fight Club, right? So with his remake, he went down the road of going, well, I'm not just going to remake shot for shot Halloween. I don't want to rely on the tropes too much, which is quite brave. And rather than go, if we're looking at the nature v nurture argument of serial killers, Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween, was almost the nature aspect, because there's no indication why a young child would murder his sister and become a silent, killing machine, or not really a machine in the first film. That comes much later. But in Rob Zombie's Halloween, it's almost heavily implied that it's the nature. He is in an awful upbringing. He's got a mother that's really struggling. She's stripping, which then leads to him getting taunted at school by the bullies. His stepdad or step uncle is just awful. The gruff, some of the dialogue in the film is awful and so weird. No one talks like he writes. Yeah, it's almost like he's been to one grimy Texan roadhouse and overheard some people talking effing and jeffing and thought, well, that's it, that's how people talk. It's like not everything is backwards, deep south, or the portrayal of that. And it is quite interesting. It's like I say, if you take out the dialogue, then the first half of his Halloween, his remake, is quite unique. But it's almost when we then get the adult Michael and the Laurie character that for me it kind of then falls over. There's some great moments, some great shots, but Laurie, who's the sweet good girl, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, the Taylor Scout Compton portrayal, she's again, everything is a bit prude, shall we say. Not to sound like a prude, but it's such a contrast really to our initial Laurie. Michael Myers is now like a 7-foot hulking beast, and he wasn't that. That was Jason. In this, he's just battering people through walls, and just it's so visceral and over the top, but over the top in a way that's almost real. If that makes sense. Like it's not like Friday the 13th Part 6, which is great, where he's pushing someone's head through a metal bit of sheet. But he's almost become a movie monster as opposed to a man. And if we're looking at film versus film, which we kind of did last week with my guest Peter Goddard, looking at the Video Nasties, there's no question that John Carpenter's film is the daddy. The remake has its moments. It's interesting. It's quite different, which is, I think, quite commendable. But it's just the dialogue and the characterizations. It really brings it down from a level of class that Halloween has to something that you'd pick up for £2 on a X rental, in the days of Blockbuster, let's say. So looking at remakes, the original easily wins hands out. Now, our next remake. So it's the Bourne movie to the original's Bond. Do you know what, Bericles? I've not actually ever seen any of the Bourne films. The amount of times where I've seen on Sky that they've got the Bourne collection, I've downloaded the first one, I just never get around to watching it. Funnily enough, all of the James Bond films are on Prime at the moment. And, going back to watch Dr. No recently, and Sean Connery is very bossy with the women, isn't he? He doesn't really take no for an answer, which in today's world is a bit like, oh God, that's a bit problematic. I don't know if Bourne's the same. Isn't he just amnesiac? An amnesiac that's been programmed? I don't know. I will agree, but like I say, never seen the Bourne films. Maybe I should. But we're now going to go on to the other big franchise from the slasher icons that have been subsequently remade. I do realise that I haven't included in my list one very particular remake, which I think I'll discuss after this. I don't have any pictures prepared on my little slideshows, but we'll definitely discuss it because it's... yeah, I agree, Gruff. I agree about old school Connery. It's a bit of a different viewing in today's age than when you see it as a kid. But that's the Friday the 13th franchise. Now, I'm not going to talk like I did on the Halloween. I'm not going to do a deep dive on the original film because the remake isn't a remake of the original film. It's almost a remake condensing parts 1 to 3 to a degree. And I agree, Fran the Cannon. One of my friends is a really big Friday the 13th fan, and he hates the remake. I think the remake is fun, and then again, he hates Freddy vs. Jason. Other than some bad CGI in places, I think Freddy vs. Jason is fine. It's a dumb popcorn horror. They're not, the Friday films have never been highbrow. Like, Halloween's always been my franchise. I saw Friday the 13th films much later because they never really seemed to get the TV exposure on terrestrial TV when I was growing up. But the remake, Marcus Nispel's remake, is very much a new film, but a reboot to the franchise, if that makes sense. The original Friday the 13th, Sean S. Cunningham, we have a tale of a young boy, Jason Voorhees, but drowning in the lake because the camp counselors are too busy being pure shaggers, and they start getting killed off one by one. It turns out, spoiler alert, it's his mum. Now, the second film, or at the very end of the first film, we find out that a young deformed Jason is still alive. The second film, he's now this hulking man with a bag on his head, which is very reminiscent of The Town That Dreaded Sundown. Which again, I probably should have included in this list because the original's fine and the remake is actually pretty good. But like I say, there's too many. I was going to do the stepfather films in this as well, but ran out of time. Too many things. And then by the third film, it's the third film, the Friday the 13th Part 3 3D, where he gets his iconic hockey mask. So really trying to kind of cover the original versus the remake is difficult here because the remake is a reboot of the series and it's almost covering the first three films. But it's fine. It's kind of similar in the vein to the Platinum Dunes remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's not too much like the original, but it almost has a very modern sense of that dread. Like, I really like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. It's quite nasty in places, but it also has some great. Jessica Biel's protagonist is great. It's got a great feel to it. Friday the 13th is a bit more schlocky. It's more about body count as opposed to kind of creating too much dread. And they've kind of then gone for that with this, where you've got some quite unlikable teenagers, and you almost root for them to get killed because they're all dickheads, basically. We've got Jared Padalecki, Supernatural, which we've discussed on the show before, playing the protagonist, searching for his sister. And he comes a cropper when he comes across Jason Voorhees, who's kind of kidnapped his sister because she looks similar to his mother, I believe. I think it's got a locket of his mother, she got decapitated. But it's fun. Again, I can't really do a comparative which one's better because it's not a direct one-for-one. But if you like the slashers, if you like the Friday the 13th, and if you've not seen the remake, give it a watch. It's divisive. A lot of people don't like it. I don't personally know why. If we're going to talk about another thing, which I forgot to include in here, that's why there's no pictures, Nightmare on Elm Street. This one it's difficult, but this one, the remake, was absolute dog turd. Could that be because instead of us having a masked killer who is silent and just has a certain presence, a certain kill type, they were trying to remake a film which had two very iconic performances. Is it? I was going to say Heather Langenkamp, but isn't that the one? No, that is it. Heather. Yeah, the main girl from Nightmare on Elm Street. I believe it's Heather Langenkamp, and Robert Englund playing Freddy Krueger. Such an iconic killer, such a great performance. It's the original has it all. When you try to remake that, and again, I didn't include this in the list. Apologies. You're trying to replicate something that had such an iconic killer, and I'm talking even before his quips and his more comedic elements from part 4 to 6 or 7, 4 to 6 I'd say. And they got a great actor in, but it's how can you do that? How can you replicate or do a new take on that can be looked at in the same way? Similarly, the original Nightmare on Elm Street, such a unique look in terms of the dream world, in terms of the real world, and how the thin line blurs between characters kind of slipping into that world. The remake went for almost like an MTV version of that, and it feels cheap. So in terms of talking again about a franchise where we've got a remake of an original, and you can do a comparative because they're telling essentially the same story. That's one of those tales where it just goes wrong because for whatever reason the approach they've taken just does not work. And I mean, this discussion is more of a stream of consciousness really than a set out list, but that follows us on to a another one where the remake just falls so far away from the original. Going back to our boy Johnny C. John Carpenter, and that's The Fog. We have an original tale where it borders the line of slasher. It is essentially a slasher, but it's a ghost story as well. Brilliantly done. This then also got the modern early 2000s, mid 2000s remake treatment. Great young cast, but you lost that feel, you lost that tone, you lost the dread of the original for a focus on CGI, on MTV cuts, which automatically date it to that era. You can argue films from the 80s have that 80s dating, but it's I don't know if it's maybe a renaissance of nostalgia, but for me, I was too young to watch it at the time, but you see these films now and you love that feel, whereas the early CGI days where there's such a reliance on what are bad effects, you almost think, why bother? If you can't make it look good, why bother doing it? So we're looking at this original film. It's Jamie Lee Curtis as an early role, Tom Atkins, and we've got a ghost story of these ghostly pirates. They were lepers. They were denied access to this town in, goes like 500 years ago, whatever. So they're now coming back for their revenge, killing off people one by one. It is brilliantly done. Early 2000s, they go, right, okay, it's not a franchise, but John Carpenter, whose films are pretty much at this stage become cult classics, John Carpenter, his name had... his films get looked at a different eye. They didn't necessarily all they weren't box office smashes at the time, but they're well regarded, such as The Thing. The Thing was a bomb when it was released. It bombed because it was released at the same time as E.T., a happy alien film. But it's in later years, rightly so, it's been regarded as a classic. Such as things like The Thing. It didn't become a franchise. It was a very much, what in these days seems like a bit of a lost art, a self-contained story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It doesn't need to be franchised. You don't need to write it out as a trilogy. They took the idea and went, oh yeah, we can do that in the modern age. And it is the drizzling shits. Necro Eric, I usually refuse to watch remakes. I like to have an open mind with remakes because I do think some are great. I've talked before about Maniac. I've talked, I enjoyed the Friday the 13th remake, but it's the drizzling shit. If we're looking at original versus remake, the original 10 times over. The Fog by John Carpenter. If you try to say it's one of his greats, a lot of his films are his greats. It's really difficult to whittle it down. You've got your very top tier things like The Thing for me and Halloween, and then everything else is really high level. But The Thing remake is just, it's really hard to watch. It's bad. Now, speaking of Necro Eric in the chat, we're going to go to Canada Land this is image from the remake, for the slasher film, My Bloody Valentine. Everything could have gone wrong for this film, the remake I'm going to be talking about specifically, because it was released at the era of 3D. When there was a point where it's like 3D can work, yet 3D now is really good, yeah? No. Avatar was cool when I first saw it in 3D in the cinema. It's not a great story. And Prometheus, again, not a great story, but seeing it 3D in the cinema was great. The majority of 3D films in the more recent 3D renaissance, or trying to force it down our throats, let's say, have been ass piss, quite frankly. But My Bloody Valentine, the remake, the 3D remake, was a lot of fun. They had fun with it. They thought, we're going to make this 3D. We're throwing the kitchen sink at it. If you're having a horror that's 3D, you want things coming out of the screen at you. We don't want to do the whole trope of it's a 3D film, but it was shot in 2D, and we're just going to kind of make it seem almost slightly layered, like that crap. They went all out on it, and it's a lot of fun. The original film was a 1981 Canadian slasher film that's directed by George Mihalka and written by John Baird, starring Paul Kelman, Laurie Hellier, and Neil Affleck. I've only actually seen the original My Bloody Valentine once years ago, so here's the plot to remind anyone who's similar to myself or maybe hasn't seen it. It tells about a group of young adults who decide to throw a Valentine's Day party, only to incur the vengeful wrath of a maniac in mining gear who begins a killing spree. It's a lot of fun. The original's a lot of fun, so you can see the kills there. It's just over the top nonsense gore, but it's just fun. And the remake, what they did with the remake was went, okay, we're not reinventing the wheel here. The original My Bloody Valentine's a cool slasher film, but it's not regarded like Halloween. It's not regarded like Nightmare Friday. It's fun though, so let's just do that. Let's get another young group of actors. They've got Jensen Ackles, again from Supernatural. So I think this may have come out as the remake may have been a similar time to 2009. So I think it was only a couple of years maybe after the Friday the 13th remake. Maybe they were having an off season of Supernatural so the guys could make some films. Yeah, they just went for it and had fun. So these films, I don't think necessarily one. I'm not going to say the remake is better than the original. That is rarely the case. But the remake is a similar level. You can just... They're both films where if you want to watch a good slasher, you want to see some inventive, over-the-top kills, get some popcorn, pop a beer, watch either of these, and you are going to have a good time. So it's... Again, like I say, it's one of the lesser-known original films in regards to the remakes, but no less is it as fun. Which leads me to the last one. Now, like I say, I've got some honourable mentions. There's far too many to go through on a remake of slashers. You got Black Christmas, you got Prom Night. Oh God, The Stepfather. I was going to do the Stepfather films because they are schlocky early 90s horror thrillers. The remake and the original. It was a bit of a franchise. But time got away from me, so maybe there's a future for doing slasher discussions and whatnot. Who knows? But I wanted to end this up with Child's Play. Child's Play, the Chucky films, if you will. A quick swig of water. Now, there's a lot of notoriety, good or bad, with Child's Play. More specifically, Part 3. But it is a franchise that if you're going to talk about doing a remake, I'm not necessarily a big fan of the remake, but it fits the criteria of you have a successful film. Oh, Fran the Can, I've not seen the Prom Night remake, but I mean, Prom Night was fine. I didn't think it was great, so I won't seek out the remake. But yeah, Child's Play is prime cut for a remake. You have a successful initial film. You then have a number of sequels with diminishing returns, bit of a resurgence, and then we're back to diminishing returns. So for Child's Play, we had Part 1, which was 1988, directed by Tom Holland, from a screenplay by Holland, series creator Don Mancini, and John LaFia, based on a story by Mancini. It's just inventive. You have a serial killer who transposes his soul into that of a good guy doll, which is the new hip toy that kids want to play with. The voice is done by, what's his name? Brad Dourif, who's just excellent. And he has his soul transposed into his doll because he's about to be gunned down in this department store. but he eventually wants to have a body back. He doesn't want to be a doll all the time. He goes on a bit of a killing spree, trying to do those that wronged him. And he is picked up by the mother of a young boy, Andy Barclay, to give to her son because she can't afford the newest doll, so she manages to get this one on the cheap. There's some great inventive kills in it. I really like the sequel, the second part. The third isn't so popular. I think the third had some great set pieces and some good kills. The story lulls a bit. It's also been a bit marred with controversy, incorrectly so. But there was a huge, awful tragedy in the UK, and this was unfortunately kind of linked with it in terms of media influencing violence. I won't go into it, but if you know, you know. It then had a lull, a quiet period before coming back with Bride of Chucky, which was excellent. They really played into the fun of it. It was basically the Bride of Frankenstein, but with a love story with dolls. And then, yeah, Seed of Chucky was absolute garbage. It was so bad. Don Mancini brought the series back to a more horror-based roots with Curse of Chucky and Cult of Chucky. They're fine, but they really weren't that memorable to me. Not for anything in particular. I liked what he was trying to do with connecting parts to the original parts of the franchise. But Chucky is, again, it's kind of similar to like Phantasm. Really fun horror series, but you're constantly having the main character get killed and destroyed at the end, and then through somehow they are back in the sequel. They're fun. I'm not going to say anything about that, but you know, it's you kind of have to throw your logic sometimes out the window. So the original was 1988. This was then remade in 2019. Let's go to the reboot. It was directed by Lars Klevberg from a screenplay written by Tyler Burton Smith. It serves as a remake of the 88 film and a reboot of the Child's Play franchise. It's got a great cast. Aubrey Plaza is excellent. If you've ever seen Parks and Recreations, or Black Bear, I think was a pretty decent film of hers recently. Gabriel Bateman, Brian Tyree Henry, David Lewis, Tim Matheson, and Mark Hamill, as mentioned in the chat, did the voice of Chucky. Follows a family terrorized by a high-tech doll who becomes self-aware and subsequently murderous. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot better than it kind of almost had any right to be. Like I say, it's the right formula for doing a remake of a slasher. You have an established franchise. The franchise has almost run its course a couple of times over. It's an IP that is relatable. In this instance, they went for the original title because after part 3, it was all Chucky-based films, Chucky-based titles. There's even been a TV series called Chucky, which again has had very mixed responses. I quite enjoyed it. You had Jennifer Tilly back, which is excellent. Fiona Dourif, Brad Dourif voicing Chucky, and Devon Sawyer from Idle Hands and Final Destination in it. It's a good series. But doing a remake of it, they took the original title, taking it back to the first film. It's not a Chucky film per se, Child's Play film. And it was a lot of fun. They went quite a different route. It's a self-aware high-tech doll. He just wants to be friends, but he's a bit cuckoo bananas. Yeah, from memory, this was quite fun. I think the finale, I remember thinking was a little bit silly, but then how else could you go big when you've got one little doll? Get loads of dolls, have them all become self-aware. And yeah, again, I can't necessarily say one's better than the other. I mean, for me, I kind of agree. Who has it said it in the chat? Yeah, with the Gruff. Child's Play 2, I think, is excellent. They just the finale at the toy factory. They really go for it. I think it's brilliant. The first film's great. The remake of the first film is great. I really can't say one is better than t'other. But that's kind of going to round out my little mini remake season, specifically this time looking at slashers. Like I say, tons that I'll have missed. Just cherry picked ones where I think we've got a little bit of variety, a little bit of range of some of the classics, and how a classic can be remade to a good degree, how it can be almost butchered basically with the fog and everything in between. So, moving on to talking about next week now. I made a decision a little bit earlier on that I want to talk about a particular director. I'm not going to do all his work. I'm going to pick three or four films. Part of me wanted to focus on one big part of this director's work, but I thought, no. I am in discussions with another podcast host for his show. If he gets to this topic, to discuss said topic, because it's something that I absolutely love. So we will not be touching on Twin Peaks, but next week we are going to be discussing the mind-melding, transcendental horror thriller noir of David Lynch. He is an incredible filmmaker. I've seen a number of his films, not all of his films. I think this week I really want to watch. God, my memory is so bad. Which film is it of his that's meant to be pretty darn scary? And I've got in a box set, but I haven't watched yet. Lost Highway. Lost Highway. I'm definitely going to be featuring that, but The Gruff, the newest Twin Peaks series. Oh. So we'll talk a little bit about Twin Peaks now, but I won't do a show on Twin Peaks if I don't end up doing this discussion with with Andy for Retro Chat. I will definitely look at Twin Peaks, but I'd much if he goes to do Twin Peaks, which I've kind of discussed with him, I would love to be involved in, even if doing a little talking bit on that, because it's a show I love. It's retro gold, so it would fit his IP really well. But the newest series, Twin Peaks, my goodness, it's so good. It's so good. Again, it's typical Twin Peaks. I couldn't really tell you 100% of what's going on, but my God, he's a visionary. He makes you, without going into too much detail, he makes you have a character that you want so bad to be normal, and for the longest time, he almost becomes irritating that it winds you up. But then you can't help but just really feel for the character, and you want the best for them. It's very vague, I know that, but the Twin Peaks: The Return is incredible. It more than makes up for the majority of Twin Peaks Series 2, which through studio interference, Mark Frost and David Lynch stepping away, the big chunk of the middle of Twin Peaks Series 2 is no need to watch it. It's not very good. But the first half of season 2, finale season 2, and then The Return are just incredible TV. Brilliant. But we're going to be looking at David Lynch, some David Lynch films. I think probably, to throw it out there, Blue Velvet, Eraserhead, Wild at Heart, and maybe Mulholland Drive. And if I've watched it, I will discuss. We'll discuss Lost Highway. Inland Empire, I haven't seen it yet, but I know that's a very, very weird film, so I wouldn't necessarily say that's horror. But yeah, next week's going to be David Lynch week. So I hope to see you then. Talk about the rest of the week. Podcast streams, you'll have Andy's show. I don't know if Andy's show was today. It may have been delayed. I know he said that it's potentially be another day of the week last week. But when that show's on, that'll be on the MOS network. And podcast feeds. Next week, you'll have the new episode for Turning Ears from Berkeley's. Really looking forward to that. It's an era of wrestling I know nothing about, so I'm finding it incredibly interesting. Ministry of Slam, Sunday, 7 p.m. The Gruff, not seen any of his films, I'm afraid to say. What's the best introduction for The Gruff for David Lynch? That's a tough one. Gruff, let me know if you like The X-Files. If you like The X-Files, I would say start with the TV series Twin Peaks. The best way to describe Twin Peaks is noir, mystery, sci-fi, horror, soap opera, comedy. A lot of different things, but it works. And you've also got David Duchovny in a few roles as a character. I don't know. I mean, I'd say a really great film. Just I think it won an Academy Award. Is The Elephant Man. The Elephant Man's incredible, but there's so many different things. It depends how weird you want to go. Eraserhead is his first thing, and it's very weird. Thanks, Necro. Thank you for coming along. Do I like the X-Files? The Graph says, I love X-Files. It was my thing back in the day. I would say hunt down season 1. Well, you're probably getting the box at season 1 and 2, but season 1 of Twin Peaks. The music is incredible. It's almost dreamlike. The setting, it's just brilliant. You'll probably fall in love with which character. I mean, Audrey's played by an older actress, but she's playing quite young in that, to be fair. But there's a dreamlike quality to it. It's not too much. It's not like the X-Files where it's Monster of the Week. It's a murder mystery, but there's so much weirdness going on that it's brilliant. The season 2 does take a massive dip for a long period of time. Director and writer had moved on because of XYZ. I've seen Twin Peaks season 1, 2, just not any films. Oh, sorry, Gruff. I need to watch the newest Twin Peaks. Not seen any of the films. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, watch the new series. In terms of films, do you know what? I would say either Blue Velvet or Mulholland Drive, because I think that they're his best. And Elephant Man's incredible. It's a biopic, but Eraserhead, I would say work your way towards. See if you like Mulholland Drive or Blue Velvet first, because Eraserhead is weird. It's really good. It is really good, but it's so weird. But we'll go into those films a bit more next week. We'll have a discussion on it. So next week we'll discuss at what point we'll be doing the book club again, whether it's the following week or the following week after that. Depends how far I'm into it, but it sounds like Fran the Can's in a similar position to me. Well, that about wraps it up for tonight's show. Thanks for joining the chat. If you've been watching it on Twitch, head over also to the YouTube channel. Hit like if you can. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps the MOS network and the algorithm. All that good stuff. I'm going to be chucking this up onto podcast streams after we finish. I'm probably going to go watch some trashy TV for a little bit in between. But yeah, thanks for coming along again. Have a great evening and see you next time.